We wanted to define conservatism in a way that a conservative in any culture could agree with, right? And our basic understanding is that conservatism has to do with the defense of an ancestral tradition, right? Which is very close to Burke's understanding of conservatism. In fact, the phrase, the wisdom of our ancestors, comes directly from Burke. So once you understand a civilization or a culture as a continuity through time, then the question is, what are the crucial institutions that conservatives basically everywhere are fundamentally concerned with, that conserve, right? That conserve values through time, that replicate the culture generation after generation, and that when threatened or disrupted, create crises. And we basically came out with a trinity, as it were. One is religion, right? So every world civilization, right? Whether it's Christianity in the West or Judaism in Israel, Islam in the Middle East, Hinduism in India, right? Every world civilization has some religious foundation, right? Which is the basis of its mores. I mean, art. I mean, it's basically an all-embracing kind of influence. Of course, in the West, there's been a secularization process recently, which is something we can get to. But conservatives have generally, even when they're not personally religious, have understood the value of religious tradition, right? The second is maybe the most obvious, is the family. Without procreation and the education that goes on within a family, there's no future for the society, right? So conservatives have always had a fundamental concern for the well-being of the family and grave concern about, we have today all this discussion of family values, right? I mean, that's a very American debate. Radical changes and attacks on the traditional family are something that rile conservatives pretty much everywhere. And the third would be education, right? Because education is what intellectually transmits a cultural tradition through time, right? So in the case of the West, we referred to like the origins of the Western educational tradition in Greece and Rome, and how it's been continuous through the Middle Ages into the modern era. And of course, now we see conservatives very concerned with, the rejection of the Western canon, for example, in universities. So, and now, fourth thing I could say that kind of follows from this, that touches on what you had just mentioned, PJ, is that we see each of these things are neither statist nor really individualist. In other words, not liberal in the sense of focusing all on the individual, nor statist and totalitarian, but focused on intermediary institutions. So the family, the church, private educational institutions, homeschooling, all these kinds of things. Homeschooling support networks, economic as professional associations of different kinds. So this idea of being communal, but not necessarily statist and totalitarian, or it's certainly not totalitarian, but not necessarily statist, while seeing the state as having a proper function, is something I think that distinguishes conservatism, the conservative tradition, from both liberal radical individualism, if you go in that direction, and any kind of sort of statist, socialist, or fascist ideology.